The fallout from the incident on Main Street was swift and far-reaching. What began as a routine walk home had transformed James Parker Callahan into a national figure, and his family into the face of a growing movement demanding systemic change. In the days following the confrontation, Elmwood became ground zero for the conversation around racial justice and police reform. Reporters from major news outlets lined the streets, interviewing locals, activists, and community leaders. The town, once known for its quiet charm, was now the epicenter of a national reckoning. James, who had always preferred to advocate through quiet conversations and thoughtful writing, found himself thrust into the spotlight. Initially reluctant, he quickly realized that this platform wasn't just for him, it was for everyone who had ever been profiled, harassed, or silenced. He couldn't turn away from this responsibility. That week, the Elmwood Town Hall was packed beyond capacity for a public forum on policing. Residents of all backgrounds gathered, their voices filling the room with both anger and hope. James stood at the front, alongside his father and other local leaders, ready to address the crowd. Senator Richard Callahan opened the meeting. "What happened to my son could have happened to anyone," he began, his voice strong. "But what matters is how we respond. Elmwood has a choice: we can either be the town that ignored the cries for justice, or we can be the town that led the charge for change." The crowd erupted into applause, but the energy shifted when James stepped forward. He adjusted the microphone, scanning the room. "I want to tell you what I felt that day," he began, his voice calm but powerful. "I felt fear. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I knew that my skin color was enough to make me a target. That fear is not something anyone should have to live with. And it's something we can change, together." His words hung in the air, resonating deeply. One by one, people began to share their own experiences. A middle-aged black woman recounted being stopped while jogging in her own neighborhood. A young white man admitted that he had never considered the privilege he carried until he witnessed James's arrest. A Latina mother spoke of her fears for her teenage sons. Officer Grant, though suspended, had become a symbol of the problem, one of many officers across the nation who acted on biases rather than facts. Yet even among law enforcement, there were voices of support for reform. Sergeant Davis spoke up that night. "I've been a cop for 25 years, Davis said, standing next to James. "And I'll be the first to admit, we've got work to do. This isn't about hating police, it's about making policing better. We need to rebuild trust, and that starts with accountability." His statement was met with cautious applause, but it was a start. Over the next few months, James became a regular fixture at town meetings, speaking at schools, churches, and community centers. He founded a grassroots organization, Voices of Elmwood, dedicated to advocating for policy changes and fostering dialogue between the police and the community. At the national level, Senator Callahan pushed forward with a new bill, the Community Accountability and Police Reform Act. The bill proposed mandatory body cameras, independent review boards, and comprehensive training programs focused on de-escalation and bias reduction. The bill gained traction, sparking debates across the political spectrum. Despite the growing support, there was resistance. Opponents argued that the bill was anti-police and would hinder law enforcement. Protests erupted in neighboring towns, some accusing the Callahan family of fueling division. James received threatening letters and hate messages online, but he refused to be intimidated. One night, after a particularly heated town hall, James sat in his room, staring at his journal. He had filled its pages with speeches, notes from meetings, and personal reflections. The weight of the responsibility was heavy, but he knew he couldn't stop now. His father knocked gently on the door and entered. "You've taken on a lot," Senator Callahan said, sitting beside him. "I'm proud of you, but I want to make sure you're okay." James nodded. "I'm tired, but I can't quit. People are counting on us." His father smiled. "You're stronger than I ever imagined, but remember, this isn't just your burden. We're in this together." In the weeks that followed, progress was evident. The Elmwood Police Department implemented new training programs, and the Citizen Oversight Committee began reviewing cases of misconduct. The mural of James became a gathering point for rallies and vigils, a symbol of both the struggle and the hope for a better future. The pivotal moment came 6 months later, when the Community Accountability and Police Reform Act passed in the Senate by a narrow margin. It was a historic victory, and James stood beside his father on the Capitol steps as they addressed the nation. "This bill is not the end," James said, his voice echoing across the crowd. "It's the beginning. Real change comes from the ground up. From every conversation, every act of courage, and every stand against injustice. We've proven that when we stand together, we're unstoppable." In the weeks that followed, progress was evident. The Elmwood Police Department implemented new training programs, and the Citizen Oversight Committee began reviewing cases of misconduct. The mural of James became a gathering point for rallies and vigils, a symbol of both the struggle and the hope for a better future. The pivotal moment came 6 months later, when the Community Accountability and Police Reform Act passed in the Senate by a narrow margin. It was a historic victory, and James stood beside his father on the Capitol steps as they addressed the nation. "This bill is not the end," James said, his voice echoing across the crowd. "It's the beginning. Real change comes from the ground up. From every conversation, every act of courage, and every stand against injustice. We've proven that when we stand together, we're unstoppable."